Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live Tuesday edition. Glad everybody's here today. Again, always appreciate you making me part of your daily football routine. We're here 5 days a week, off Wednesdays and Thursdays. We have the start sit stream on Sundays at 11. Also, we have gambling experts in on Friday and Saturday. Friday, Adam Thompson of bookies.com. Saturday, John Ryan. Today on Tuesdays, Brandon Kravitz at the bottom of the hour comes in to go over some waiver wire options. And remember, on Mondays, we always have Anthony Servino in the house. All right, let's get the things rolling here. Monday Night Football. Look, let's think about this. So fantasy football, obviously very hard to predict. And I always take it personally when I give start-sit advice. I put a lot of thought into game flow, game script, morning, Albert, and all the different elements. There are so many elements I put in to projecting player performance each week. And yet at the end of the day, just look at it this way. 49ers are playing the Vikings. Yes, left tackle Trent Williams is out. Yes, Deebo Samuel is out. But the 49ers, we've seen, can have an elite defense. And even with Deebo out, they should be fine. But it's the NFL. It doesn't matter. The Vikings come out, win by 5 points. Kirk Cousins looks like a world beater. 378 yards and 2 touchdowns against the 49ers defense. Now, look, if you're asking me, the 49ers did not show up for this game. Defensively, it looked like they had no inclination to attack. It was a very weird game. We had Charvarius Ward, steal a ball from Jordan Addison once. We had Jordan Addison steal a ball back from Charvarius Ward for a touchdown. We have blown coverages. It was a horrific effort by the Vikings defense. But you give credit to the Vikings. Hey, you always lay the positive on the team that wins because they took advantage of the opportunities. Kirk Cousins gets it done. Jordan Addison has a smash game. And I was telling people, look, when they had really good options at receiver, I was telling them, well, look, Jordan Addison's going to be in trouble here. Kirk Cousins is going to probably be under pressure all night. I know the Vikings have a good offensive line, but we've seen the 49ers shred good offensive lines. So that's not a problem. And with no Justin Jefferson, coverage is so different as well. But again, who projects this? And then TJ Hockenson, 11 for 86 on 12 targets. Well, with no Jefferson, you would have expected, they're just going to put Fred Warner on Hockenson because you could make an argument for Addison, but Hockenson is their most reliable pass catcher. So you put Warner on him and say, good night, you're done. Didn't happen. Hockenson goes off for 19.6 PPR points without scoring a touchdown. So you give a lot of credit to these Vikings. They came out at home, played inspired football. It's probably the best game offensively. I know they had Justin Jefferson, but they lost most of those games. This is probably the most impressive offensive effort they had because this was against an elite defense on paper. But again, the ebbs and flows of the NFL, and you wonder why our fantasy teams are going up and down each week. Why some of us are off to slow starts. Well, think about it. Who would have projected the Bills to be 4-3? Who would project the 49ers to lose 2 straight games at this point? So all these things, projecting the NFL, betting games, picking winners without the point spread. That's not easy. It's tough to go way over 60%, way over 65%, picking just straight winners. Survivor pools, teams are knocked out all the time. So again, this is what we have to understand. We live in a world of probability, and my job as an analyst is to get as many variables in the collection to at least provide the probability chance. We have to project the game script for every game. But when it's an upset, already that game script is probably toast. So again, Vikings. Now, here's the one thing. Cam Akers. Finally. Now, I know people are going to get the yards per carry and they say, well, Alexander Madison this time outplayed Akers. When the game was in the second half and it was close, it was Akers on the field. We had the one good run by Madison early. God bless him. Nice run. But against good opponents. Good morning, Randy. Good morning, Evan. But realistically, other than the yards per carry, Cam Akers in the very, very small sample with Minnesota has looked better than Madison. Madison had the 2 cake games where he played well. He played Carolina and he played the Chargers. Other than that, he's been less than 3 yards per pop. To me, he was always the last 3 years, the last 2 years and this year. So that's 3 years now. The first 2 years in the league, he was 4.5 yards per carry. Since then, 3.5. sub-replacement level, very ordinary. I do have to think Cam Akers is going to get a real shot here. The snap share still went in favor of Madison, 53-39. But look, I'm a Cam Akers truther, okay? And what he did at the end of last season, I know they had an easy schedule down the stretch. I get that. But the Rams had no offensive line. Cam Akers was a pseudo league winner down the stretch for those who had him, right? And that was after people dropped him because Sean McVay had dropped him in the middle of last season and brought him back. But if Cam Akers gets shot, this is one of the better offensive lines in the league, both from a running and a pass blocking perspective. So Akers is still going to be a split. Madison's not just completely going away. But we do know at least Akers had 12 touches to 10 for Madison. Again, snap share went to Madison. But I have to think now that they see a different level of play with Akers. And I have to think Akers is at least going to get an equal split. Of course, you see it with Demercado. We've seen it with Zack Evans, we thought. But good luck predicting. But I have to think Cam Akers is going to have a shot here. And Cam Akers could have a really, really good second half of the season if he could get into a little bit more of a lead role. So there's that. All right, 49ers side of the ball. Well, the first problem, and I don't know if there was something wrong with Brandon Ayuk, but he barely got targeted in the second half. He was the easiest matchup to call in this game. We know the Vikings bring a lot of pressure. They drop a lot of coverage. The middle of the field is often vacated. Brandon Ayuk is very, very capable of running those routes. But they stopped going to him. All of a sudden, Jawan Jennings gets 9 targets. Huh? Fine that George Kittle gets his obviously. Kittle's a superstar, so he gets a 70 and he cashes 5 for 78. Nice game. But Ray McLeod gets 3 targets. Again, Jennings gets 9. That's 12 targets to those two for 6 for Ayuk. Criminal. Even when they knew the blitz was coming. Ayuk, in his first year, when Debo got hurt, he took over those underneath routes. He can run every route in the book. Charlene, welcome. And that's the problem. I mean, he's a superstar, Brandon Ayuk is. And they failed to get him the ball in the second half when they had the opportunity. I just don't understand it. Christian McCaffrey, what injury? 100% of the snaps, 3 yards per carry. No Trent Williams certainly hurts. He does go 3 for 51. Beautiful screen pass, well blocked, well designed, breaks a few tackles, shimmies through traffic, gets a touchdown. Cashes for fantasy, 2 touchdowns. So there you go there. But 96 yards, nobody's complaining about that. So McCaffrey, business as usual. But what I did see, Elijah Mitchell barely played 8% of the snaps. We've seen this before. But when Mitchell is completely healthy, which now he is, and McCaffrey's in, Jordan Mason is the number 3, and he's not going to see work. Mitchell, it all depends. There was a Thursday night game where he got a lot of work. There's an occasional blowout where he gets work. But when the games are close or they're losing, this is what you could get from Mitchell. 1 carry, -1 yard. So I guess if you lose points in the fantasy league, I guess Mitchell, who got a touch, scored less than Jordan Mason, who didn't touch the ball. There's that. All right, but that said, Kittle, we understand the drill. In the last 4 weeks, 2 good games, 2 busts. 1 for 7, I think, 1 for maybe 9. He's going to have those games. You have to start him every week. And when you draft him, you understand with George Kittle, you're going to have those 2-point games. You're going to get 5 or 6 of them a year. But you know there are eruption games in there, like the 3 touchdown game he had against, a couple weeks ago. So understand with Kittle. You set it, you forget it, and don't get mad when he gets to 1.9 because when you drafted him, you signed up for that. But that's the tight end position, other than Kelsey. If you spend a first-round pick on Kelsey, you don't get those one catch for 9-yard games. But everybody else in the tight end mix, yeah. Well, Mark Andrews probably not either. Charlene, I look at the Henderson bio today. The Rams play. That's going to be a back and forth. That's procedural. It's all procedural. That's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. There are other players. There was somebody else. I don't remember who. There are players who are playing. They revert to the practice squad. And then when the game day comes, they call them back up. Procedural. You got to keep so many players on the active roster. Practice squad, you can play with deactivations and things. It's procedural. And Henderson will be back next week. So that's a great, great, great question that everybody needs to be aware of. Don't let the practice, especially if you know the roster. If you know that if there's a reason why a player's a practice squad guy, that's it. But otherwise, in a case like this where he's playing, yeah, he'll be off the practice squad. That's a great question. Anthony, welcome. And yes, Kelsey and Andrews, yeah, they are the only guarantees. That's it. And the Kelsey guarantee is obviously higher. You paid the extra round price for that, and that's higher guarantee. Andrews, I don't think he's at 70 yards in a game. Charlene, that's funny. You're flipping out. It makes sense. No, I'm glad you asked the question. But Anthony, you're right. Yeah, they're definitely it right now. Now, Goddard's getting back in that circle trust pretty quickly. I'll quickly talk about him. It was nice with Kevin says Hawk and Laporta as well. Yeah, they're cashing too. They definitely are. Yeah, they definitely have a good floor each week for sure. Hawkinson gets quite a few targets. Laporta gets 5 to 8 targets most week, top of my head. I think he had one game where he had more, but yes, they definitely have a good floor price as well. Goddard's getting in that equation too. They really figured out. So the offensive coordinator, Brian Johnson of Philly, he is still scuffling. He is still trying to figure things out, but he figured out a couple things. One is throw the flipping ball to A.J. Brown. He's got that one down. So A.J. Brown is getting the ball, and that is going swimmingly well. And he tries getting it to Devontae Smith, but right now there's some disconnect right now. And he's having some concentration lapses. He had a big drop a couple weeks ago. There's just a number of things going on. He's not right now. I imagine eventually he'll be fine, but Dallas Goedert now is kind of emerging back as a temporary number 2, and I don't know how long that lasts, but he should still be an integral part of that offense. The more they figure out, the more to keep those weapons going. All right, so good there. All right, now 49ers, I think we covered that pretty well. I think we got the 49ers covered. Hey, if you're enjoying the show, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button if you're on RotoWire YouTube. We're going to go over some risers and fallers here, some notes that can help you with DFS, prop betting, or fantasy. Some players are obvious, some are non-obvious. And bottom of the hour, Brandon Kravitz is coming in to talk some waivers for you. All right. I do need to point out Patrick Mahomes here because going into the last 2 weeks, so through week 5, he had one 300-yard game, 306. That was it. Nothing more. He had one 3-touchdown game against the Bears. Great. Now, last 2 weeks, he puts up another 300-yard game last week, only 1 touchdown. This week against the Chargers, he had 300 in the first half. Now, we were hoping for more because we were greedy. He ends up with 424 and 4 touchdowns. So, is he back? I think the offense is starting to figure it out. Rashee Rice is definitely becoming a factor in the offense. That is helping Mahomes. The Marquez Valdes-Scantling thing, I had to stream him in a league. Got really lucky. He scored. But the reason I liked him this week was that Justin Watson. Justin Watson was out. He runs a lot of deep routes, and the only fill-in for that was some extra routes to MVS, and he catches. So if you need him next week, if Justin Watson's out again, it's always a dart throw at MVS, but he could get another long pass next week, so that could make him a dart throw DFS play. Just keep that in mind. They're playing Thursday night. It was a single-game slate. They're playing Denver, so there's that. But Mahomes does look to be back right now, and he's still getting those rushing yards, and that's just a nice boost to an elite player, and he might now begin to become that quarterback number 1 overall. Jalen Hurts, don't know what the knee issue is. Seems like he's fine, but if that compromises running, that could be an issue. Might even compromise him at the goal. I have no idea. Hopefully he's fine, but we don't like seeing a brace on his knee. And then, of course, we have the concerns with Josh Allen that for fantasy, he's getting it done. There's no question he's getting it done for fantasy. But the team as a team, they're strong. But for fantasy, of course, he's still getting it done. But Mahomes could start giving us that upside that we paid for on draft day. For those who drafted him up there. I'll point out Derek Carr. And I don't know if he's a riser or a faller. The last 2 weeks, well, he's thrown for 353 and 301. But he's thrown over 50 passes in each game. So there's that. 50 pass attempts, that's a lot. You don't see that so frequently. But game script has necessitated that. And in those games, he's only thrown 1 touchdown in each. So there's that as well. So basically with Derek Carr, a little more favorable at home. Indoors is always beneficial to the quarterback, especially the borderline ones. So we've got that. He is going to need volume. When teams have a great pass rush, he's going to be in trouble. So he is your ultimate streamer option. That's going to be how you view Derek Carr. Because very matchup dependent. That offensive line's a mess. Left tackle Trevor Penning, who was hurt as his rookie last year, I can't blame it on injury this year. He is not good. Last week they were without Ryan Ramczyk, their right tackle, and they, at least he's still cashed. So there's that. So we got it going on there. But yeah, Derek Carr, streaming, matchup dependent. Just don't be fooled by that 50 and 54 attempts he had the last 2 weeks, because that's not a realistic. That's his yardage is inflated because he has 35 attempts, 38, sure, but those were really extreme numbers. So just be cognizant of that. Check the chat real quick here. Uncle Ted, all right, welcome back. Anthony, yep, yeah, it's all roster construction. And Uncle Ted. Yeah, Najee. So Najee has had a very high, top of the charts, broken tackle rate and average yards after contact all year. He often plays on the obvious rundowns, and because of Matt Canada being a terrible offensive coordinator, defenses know that Najee's probably getting the ball. And so Najee he's been battling. He's playing great, but for fantasy, he hadn't been. That's the problem, right? And it's just he's a very good running back. And this week he got in the end zone, so did Jaylen Warren. But the whole thing is Pittsburgh's going to they showed a little better in offense. I know in my article on Sunday, they were really unwatchable for 3 quarters. And then they had a couple plays. That's what they are. There are a couple plays here and there. And in the fourth quarter, they caught a bit of a groove against the Rams. So there was that. I don't know with Matt Canada if it's sustainable. I'm hopeful because they have so much darn talent there. But the thing is, as soon as they get in a passing situation, Jaylen Warren comes in. Now, Harris did get a nice catch in that game, but frequently, I should say most of the time when they're in a passing situation, Jaylen Warren comes in. And so that's, those benefit of having those targets, that always boosts your fantasy value. So right now, Najee's on that running back 2 fringe. We hope for more. We may get more. If the offense gets a couple things figured out and they can have more consistency as a unit, he might get more integrated. They might get more red zone chances. So yeah, right now, obviously, we're holding Najee. We're hoping it continues, but it was encouraging to at least see him find the end zone. But his carries have been solid the last 3 games. I believe it's like 15 or so carries per game in each of those. So he's been there. Charlene, Curtis Samuel, he had typical volume last week. I think I told people on the Start Sit show, it was a 1 week I was worried about Samuel because I didn't know the Giants haven't been a great pressure team. And part of the deal with him is, Sam Howell, when the pressure comes, he throws to the middle a lot more. And so Samuel is getting more opportunities. But the Giants blitz a lot in that game, which, surprise, surprise, their defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale. Well, yeah, I guess that's what they're going to do. But they got home a little bit more. But that hurt Samuel a bit. But Samuel is a floor play each week. When he finds the end zone, you're happy, but he's a floor play. Randy, is Singletary becoming – it's a 1 week thing. That's not – Singletary – got run out of Buffalo because they didn't trust him. We saw numbers, and the point was Buffalo needed a running back, and they were quick to get rid of him. And Dameon Pierce, he's had a rough start to the season. Now, he's an interior runner. He's not the guy who's getting outside a lot. Where Singletary will bounce a little more outside. Remember, their first 4 games, they were playing without their offensive tackles. And, well, the interior line, they're only getting one of them back. But that they've had Kenyon Green, a second-year guy, injured reserve for the season. He's done. Shaq Mason, the right guard, he's fine. And they're hopefully Juice Scruggs, their rookie center, comes back this week because that's been a bit of a problem. And so, but I think that Dameon Pierce comes out of the bye as the guy because I think the offensive line now, they should be fully healthy after this week off. That's a big week for them. So I do think Dameon Pierce continues to be the lead despite what we saw in the last game they played. I just think that game they needed to get outside more, and Pierce is not that consistent outside runner. And yep, Anthony, you're right about that. Yep, it's 100% the overcoming Matt Canada. That's problematic. George Pickens is overcoming him. We're happy about that. George Pickens has 4 out of the last 5 games. He's been solid. Anthony, so here's Dalton Schultz. I talked about this one on the Sirius show on Saturday. So Dalton Schultz, notice his targets rocketed up in his production in the second half of week 6 and in week 7. Wait a minute. Slot receiver Tank Dell got concussed in the second half of week 6 and he missed week 7. My mind told me this. Middle of the field targets. They love Tank Dell in the middle of the field. Sometimes he gets outside targets, but they love him in the middle of the field. He was hurt. He comes out. They don't like their other receivers in the middle of the field. Oh, Dalton Schultz. I could be wrong. I just think it's too coincidental that Dalton Schultz became a thing because of Tank Dell being out. So I look, Dalton Schultz can't run after the catch and fall guy. Big target in the red zone. I give him that. I just think this offense is about the wide receivers. And when they have all three of them, that's what it's about. I think Dalton Schultz is going to be a pray for a touchdown guy, but that's about all. Brian Pope's in the house. Garrett Wilson, yes, his volume, Garrett Wilson's volume is extreme. And don't have the numbers in front of me, but he is getting nearly double-digit targets. And the offense, their schedule lightens up. They had a brutal schedule to start the season. Completely brutal schedule. And so Garrett Wilson's a superstar. And they understand the need to get him the ball. And he overcomes some really bad passes. But with volume, yes, I think you're looking at 15 PPR points. The ceiling isn't going to be great. Will he have a week where he scores a touchdown or two? Sure, because he can break tackles. He can maybe get some yak. So that'll happen there as well. So there's that. But Garrett Wilson's I'm excited about him coming out of the bye. Very excited. You know, somebody had a question earlier. Let me just see. Evan, should you trade DeAndre Swift for Jamar Chase? You have Saquon and Kareem Hunt. You know what? Usually running backs get hurt. And having a third one is really, really important. And so you want to get Jamar Chase. You have Ridley, CD, D-Hop, and so I see where you could get production out of the lesser receivers more than you can out of lesser running backs. If Kareem Hunt, who's already dealt with 2 injuries, is coming back, Ford's going to miss a little time. I think you need 3 running backs more than you need to add another receiver in. I think having Swift and Saquon, Warren in there too, I see. It'd be hard to bank on Warren and Kareem Hunt week after week. Temporarily, streamer, flex type, yes. But as a reliable running back too, that worries me. I would probably just lean on the running backs. And then your receiver room puts enough together to get it done. I would tell you that. See what else we got here. And I got to get back to some player analysis here. George, 7-0. Should you trade Cook and Olave for Chase and Breece Hall? If you're going to get Chase and Breece Hall, I'll make it real simple. Chase, as much as I love Olave, Chase is way better than Olave, way more productive week to week, regardless of matchup. Breece Hall, way more productive than James Cook. I have his top 5 running back going forward. So to me, I would run to hit the accept button on that one. If you're getting Chase and Breece, I would run. I would leave this show, and I never tell people to leave my show. Leave this show and smash the accept button on that. Anthony, yep, I had gone over that. Yep, Schultz, I believe that it was Tank Dell being out. Tony, Jordan loves a beast. Dalton Kincaid or Dalton Schultz. So Kincaid had the good game last week. I'm just really worried it's not sustainable. His role in the offense has not been good. The 8 for 75 came out of nowhere. It was a very weird game for Buffalo. So at this point, I'm probably saying, I just think Dalton Schultz, once Tank Dell gets back, is going to be a problem. So I am going to lean slightly on Dalton Kincaid. And I got to get back to my point. Let me take 2 more things, and I got to get back to the points of the show. Charlene, Deshaun Watson, drop or keep. So Deshaun Watson, look, at this point, here's my story on him. I do think you hold him if you have the roster space. But what I'll tell you is this. Right now, you cannot start him until he has a full productive game. He was showing signs before he hurt his shoulder that he was going to be okay. So you don't start him. Man, I started him in 2 Kings Classic leagues, and I won them both. Very lucky. I zeros at quarterback, and I somehow pulled him up. Tony, thank you. I appreciate you. So I'm going to say, you have Josh Allen. So you know what? There's a bye week coming up at some point. I don't think the Buffalo Bills had theirs yet. So you just need somebody for your bye week. So if you look at the schedules, maybe stream right now. Find somebody who's there and do that. And then Randy, Kyler Murray's tough call. It depends on your league. Look, he's not going to be a QB1. That's not going to happen. It's a new offense for him. He's never run it. Last year he had DeAndre Hopkins. He doesn't have him. So I would say that Kyler Murray's a top 15 quarterback. So if it's a super flex league, yes, you pick him up. If it's a quarterback where you're going to need somebody to come in for a bye week, you pick him up. Otherwise, maybe not so much. All right, let's get back to some player trends. I didn't get through many of these today, but we had great questions. Anthony, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. All right. Javonte Williams, stock up for him. Actually, he's usually his whole career, even when he's been healthy, as talented as he is, he breaks heads. He's like 4 yards a carry like clockwork. Last 2 weeks, he looks really good. He had a 10 for 52. Last week, 15 for 82. This week's matchup was good that he just had against Green Bay. But that was one of the better running performances I've seen from him. Now, his receiving, he had no targets 2 weeks ago, caught 3 for 14, but signs are popping. He's over 5 yards a carry his last 2 games. Javonte Williams is definitely stock up right now for sure. Jonathan Taylor, I mean, obviously we know this, but the work, as we said, I said the first week he wouldn't play much. The second week, about half, and he'd be going up. It's exactly how it worked. The snap share has been not indicative. 15%, 42, and then 50. But the touches, he went from 7 to 13 to 21. So Jonathan Taylor, but the running game is so robust in Indy right now. Zach Moss is going to have a role. Zach Moss is going to get the Tyler Algier workload where it's about double-digit touches mostly because I think they support that much work. But Zach Moss has a better line right now than he had, even last year when he was 4.8 yards per carry in his 4 starts. So Zach Moss is a flex right now. You flex him. Jonathan Taylor is right back, and he plays New Orleans. This is a rough matchup, but I can't wait to see it because the run blocking is very good, and maybe Jonathan Taylor has one of those games against a great opponent where he smashes them. Obviously, you're tempering expectations. Deontay Foreman, look, here's what I'm thinking. This is my thought, my narrative, okay? I could be wrong. My thought is this. Khalil Herbert's out a couple more weeks on the IR. I thought that all along the team sees Roschon Johnson as a very good third down back. They love him as a receiving, passing game back. They love him there. They had Herbert ahead of Roschon as the early down back. And obviously Herbert's a smaller dude, right? Foreman, I think, retains the early down role. And I think Roschon, who's expected back from the concussion tentatively right now this week, I think Roschon comes in as the passing down back, which he was all along. So he comes back to his same role. I don't think it's an enhanced role, especially after what Foreman showed the team the last 2 weeks. 15 for 65, which was over 4 yards carry 2 weeks ago. Shredded the Raiders for 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards as a rusher and a receiver. So I do think that Foreman, until Herbert's back, I do think you're starting him as an RB2. And I think Roschon Johnson is a passing down back. I think you're starting him as you did before the injury. Kareem Hunt, just notice this. Jerome Ford is going to miss some time. Now, that could mean a week. It could mean 4 weeks. It could mean less. Somewhere he's missing some time. Hunt is dinged up. He had a thigh last week. Even though he had 10 carries, he played 25% of his has to do with the injury. Pierre Strong will have a role in this backfield, but Kareem Hunt will be a very nice fantasy option this week in an enhanced role. So definitely be excited about that. Hopefully the thigh is a little bit better. Watch his practice reports, but he's definitely trending up a bit. A couple minutes, got Brandon Kravitz coming in here. Kendrick Bourne, you know what? Here's what's funny. The production is going to keep up because their skill position players in New England are such a problem. He's the best of them. And when Kendrick Bourne is and he's been in the league quite some time. He's their best receiver. And he's going to continue to see targets. There's going to be some down games. But he had a 2 for 43 3 weeks ago. That's probably his floor. And we saw Cooper Kupp with a 2 for 20. So Kendrick Bourne is fine. Play him as a wide receiver 3, and you'll have some pop weeks in there as well. Jalen Hyatt, here's my concern. The snaps were up to 73 and 71% the last 2 weeks. He did get the 75 yards and a long catch. I'm worried that Tyrod Taylor got more out of Jalen Hyatt than Daniel Jones can. And that's a problem. Brandon Kravitz, welcome in. Week 8, can you believe it?
No, simply no. The sports calendar is starting to fill up. NBA season starts tonight. Major League Baseball in full high gear. And the NFL just, man, it zooms right along. We wait all summer for it, and then next thing you know, we're halfway done with the season.
Yeah, it's bittersweet. And I think you're indicating that. I mean, it's depressing to think that the show isn't going to be around in like 8 or 9 weeks. Very depressing. But you know what? Let's enjoy the present because that's what we're here for.
It's the sprint that we love.
No doubt. So, Brandon Kravitz, we want to talk some waiver wire, and we're at that point of the season. Man, I started Deshaun Watson in a couple of my Kings Classic leagues, and fortunately, I eked out wins in those. Thank you, Deontay Foreman. Wow. Thank you. You bailed me out. This league is so ugly. It's 14 teams, 3 flexes, 4 IR spots. If a guy misses one game, so the waiver wire, there's nothing. I had guys that were saving me, like I had Valdez Scantling score for me. I had oh my God. The guy from Aguilar. I had Aguilar score for me. It was crazy. I had all these like backup guys. Last night, the third receiver, Brandon Powell went off for me for 11 points.
Look, you've got a lot of names to sift through. Okay, nobody's blaming you if you go empty on a name.
So the reason I give that long-winded intro is we're starving for waiver wire help, and you're going to help us. So start us out with quarterback.
I'm not sure that I'm going to be much help to you in that league, but hopefully everybody else that's paying attention. Let's start with the quarterback position. Gardner Minshew, and I got my eye on Kyler Murray as well. We'll talk about him in a second. For one, Gardner Minshew is widely available, so those are the kind of guys that we need to go after. And two, he's coming off a monster performance, which should give you some level of confidence as he heads into another week at home. It is against one of the top defenses in the league, but that's just what he experienced with Cleveland and was able to get by. New Orleans did just allow Trevor Lawrence to complete 68% of his throws. Lawrence threw for over 200 yards. He had over 250 total. Minshew can run around a little bit. He's found a real connection with Pittman and clearly with Josh Downs, who we'll get to. So you got to love that. And then the sneaky add to consider is Kyler Murray, if he's still out there. He practiced in a limited capacity last week. We know what this guy's capable of when he's on the field. So if you need quarterback help, it might be right around the corner.
And hopefully they waited long enough on his knee that he could run a little bit, because having that rushing production, that is something huge. I do hope he's able to run a bit, and I think he should be able to. ACL injuries are typically such that this will be almost, not quite 11 months, but close to that cusp. So hopefully they waited long enough to get him at full up. But that's a great call on that stash, Brandon Kravitz. Brandon, let's go to some running backs. Give me a handful of them that you like this week.
Yeah, there's a few to consider here. It's probably the healthiest position on the waiver wire this week. Kareem Hunt appears to have carved out a very real role for himself in Cleveland. I don't know if he's available in your league just based on that rush to add him a few weeks ago, but I could also see a situation, I know that I've experienced this, where Hunt was added, Jerome Ford was the main guy, and then Hunt was quickly thrown back out onto the waiver wire. But if he's out there, he's an absolute must-own at this point, especially with the recent news of Jerome Ford's injury that could have him out for a couple of weeks. Amari Demercado is another name. I know.
I'm in. I'm out. I'm in.
We're at that time of the year, Jim, where you're going to pick up guys. You're going to think they're useless. You're going to throw them back out onto the wire only to go and try and snatch them up again. And enter Amari Demercado into the chat here. He played 79% of Arizona's snaps. The next closest running back, who is Dameon Williams, by the way, played 19%. So it just makes absolutely no sense, but they're just trying to find some life, and it seems like Demercado is the best guy they have. Darrell Henderson is a name that I jotted down, but honestly, with this latest report that he's headed back to the practice squad and the fact that Royce Freeman had more yards than him, Myles Gaskin is still going to be part of the mix. I think we can strike Darrell Henderson. I'm curious to get your opinion on that from the waiver wire list. And then the last one would be Kenneth Gainwell, who is clearly carved out the role of handcuff for DeAndre Swift and even has some standalone value in deeper leagues. But where do you fall on Darrell Henderson?
So, Brandon, I believe this is a procedural move. You have to.
That's what I was thinking.
It's all roster. I mean, you have to carry X amount of active players on your roster. The Ravens teach us a lot. You remember how they would shuttle Melvin Gordon and Kenyon Drake back and forth, and when they needed them, they put them in. But even last week, Darrell Henderson was signed off the street, whereas Royce Freeman was previously on the practice squad. They took Darrell Henderson from the street, put him in a lead prominent role in this game. That speaks volumes. So I do believe, Brandon, you putting him on the waiver list is very smart, because some people are getting nervous about that. The practice squad thing, he will be reactivated because, look, Kyren Williams on IR, that's 3 more weeks. Ronnie Rivers on IR. They simply don't have bodies. And they told us last week they have zero faith in Zach Evans because either he was inactive or didn't get a single touch, or a single snap, I should say.
Yeah, we just seen Sean McVay go from so hot and cold with these guys that if he doesn't like a guy one week, I don't think that that's a pure indication that he's not going to use him the next week. Myles Gaskin is a talented running back, so he could also be part of the mix. I guess what I'm saying is you can add Darrell Henderson. I'm not saying don't put him on the list, but if you've got any fab left, I definitely wouldn't blow it on the guy. I'm not
smart.
there.
Smart. Yeah, because he had a really good game, but that's smart. Now, one thing I will mention, McVay trusts Henderson in pass protection. And with Matthew Stafford, that's a really important detail. The Henderson, he's like 5'8" or 9, 208. So we think of him as a little fast guy, but he's got enough weight where he's not just getting rolled over by linebackers. So I think that element of the offense, that is going to be his saving grace, even if the running isn't quite ready. But great call on those again. Wide receiver, what do you got for us, Brandon?
Yeah, and one more running back. If Cam Akers is out there, I thought he looked a lot better than Alexander Madison last night, so he'd be an interesting name. And he's somebody that I've sold all my stock on Cam Akers, but at this point, beggars can't be choosers when it comes to the waiver wire. Josh Downs is really the only wide receiver that I'm really interested in on the waiver wire. He's owned in most of the leagues that I play in, but I was looking on Yahoo Sports. They say he's 36% owned at this point.
Wow.
I probably don't need to sell you on a guy that went off for 5 catches, 125 yards, and a touchdown. So I don't know how accurate that percentage is, but it was at least low enough for me to feel like I could use him as a name. There just isn't a lot of depth at wide receiver right now that's readily available out there.
If you're in deeper leagues, PPR, again, it was all late, but like super deep league, Brandon Powell is somebody who's going to get catches. He's going to get a few catches a game, but again, that's scraping the barrel, and that's kind of more of a deep dive thing. But you're right, Brandon. There's not a lot of immediate impact players out there, but Josh Downs based on his Yahoo roster percentage, that is definitely the right call. How about tight end? What are you seeing?
Yeah, and Juwan Jennings, if you're going deep, could be another guy, especially if Debo has to miss another week. He had 5 catches for 50 yards. I'm going to go over to Taysom Hill. I guess it's that time of the year we start hyping this guy up again, but I think it's actually time to buy Taysom Hill stock. Yes. And for the record, I've never been a Taysom Hill guy. I have always provided more resistance than anything else when people ask me about, hey, should I start this guy? Should I pick him up over the years? But it looks like they're using him as a real tight end. So this is a different situation. Hill had 12 targets over the last 2 weeks after previously getting no more than 3 in any one game. So he's a real threat in the pass game now. All the cheat code ability is still there. So that's what makes him so intriguing. But you already liked that. You knew about the gadget stuff. But if he's getting real targets, he's a must-add player in fantasy at a position that lacks any real substance. So of course, we could be duped again, but I think there's real substance and validity to this.
Taysom Hill is like 33 years old. And he's getting, how many 33-year-old players? It's usually the superstars that had so much in the tank and they had enough drop, but they still had enough to be functional. He is playing good football at 33 years old. That completely stuns me. But
yeah, if I'm the GM of the Saints, I'm calling Dennis Allen every 5 minutes. Get this guy the ball. Have you seen his contract? He gets paid. He's making $10 million this year to play football. So I need my money's worth with that guy.
He was always like the point per potential league player, but man, they're utilizing him now, so I love it. Good call on that. How about defense? Who's somebody we could use this week?
Let's go with the Atlanta Falcons. 2 top 10 finishes in back-to-back weeks. They've got playmakers on the outside of the defense. You like that. They rush the passer really well. 8th in the league in quarterback pressures this year. And they get Malik Willis this week. So I think the Atlanta Falcons should be a good stream option at defense.
All right, let's get a few questions. We're a little early today, so let's get a couple questions from the chatter. LeBron's asked if you would trade Davante Adams for Tony Pollard. Which side of the deal do you like in that one, Brandon?
I like the Tony Pollard side. Top 5-ish running back in the NFL. Davante Adams seems increasingly disgruntled. Maybe he gets traded and we feel completely different about his situation. But if that doesn't happen, and usually when you're banking on a trade, it doesn't go through, I think this situation could get pretty ugly. Don't love that Raiders offense.
Yeah, and at this point, running back, you probably need a running back. And if you need a running back, it's probably the way to go. I know on draft day, obviously you took Adams before Pollard because Adams was going like 14th and Pollard was going like 18th.
It was
off
pretty
the board.
close.
It was very close. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, definitely though. Right now you probably need a running back. And then Dave is asking, do you drop Mayfield or Ritter or Wilson for this week? Mayfield is playing. Oh man, I'm not even going to turn
Buffalo Thursday night out. I'm out.
Wait a minute, though. Tre'Davious White's out. Matt Milano's out. Daquan Jones, the defensive tackle's out. And Ed Oliver's out. Mac Jones flipping shredded them. They're missing 4 of their high-end starters. Von Miller is not even close to being himself yet. So maybe based on that, what do you think?
Based on that, you've sold me a little bit. My issue is this Buccaneers offense is really easy to game plan for because they don't provide anything spectacular on their side of the ball. I just don't think that there's anything that you have to really fear when it comes to that Buccaneers offense. And Baker Mayfield, even at his best, he's a game manager. He's not a stat compiler. What were the other options? Because I think
Desmond Ritter, and let me see who they're playing here. I'm not
the Titans.
Yeah, they're playing. Oh, that's well. In theory, because you can't run on them
so
for the most part. You can pass on them. Now it's a matter if he completes his passes. And the third one,
Ritter had a down game, but he was pretty excellent in the 2 games prior. Is that game in Tennessee or in Atlanta?
It's in Tennessee, where Tennessee is they're to Jekyll and Hyde. They're very good at home and they're terrible on the road.
That's Atlanta too. So maybe Ritter is not the best option, and then who else?
Russell
do we have?
Wilson,
Russell Wilson,
and that's going to be home against the Chiefs. Now he's had games against them where they're getting blown out. Like last year, I remember like week 15-ish, and he had a lot of garbage time production. He's been running a bit.
Yeah, this defense seems different this year. Kansas City is truly. It's maybe the most undertold story of the season is that Kansas City has one of the league's top defenses, legitimately. At this point, I don't like that. I think I'm back to Baker. I think I'm with you.
I think ultimately Mike Evans against the corners they have left, that's a mismatch. And Chris Godwin even. And that's the whole offense is play action, go to the receivers. And that I think Buffalo can't hold up right now. And if you were getting their usual pass rush, it would be different. Do you know that PFF has the Buccaneers rated as one of the lowest run blocking teams, but the number 1 pass blocking team?
I think Baker Mayfield had only been sacked like 5 times going into last week. I didn't see what the updated stat was after the game against Atlanta, but they've been protecting him really, really well. And he's getting the ball out of his hands quick. He's not turning the ball over. I think this is the important part of talking all of this stuff through is what we're looking at here with those options is a nice, safe floor. And it seems like Baker Mayfield has the highest floor among the 3. Yeah,
and like I said, we can't pretend Buffalo is the Buffalo of last year or the year before, because right now they are not that team. They have been gutted by injuries. So
yeah, we all get stuck in perception mode, right? But things they change over time, and injuries tend to impact that more than anything else.
People know I'm insane because I do these player trends every week, but I have to restudy the league every week because it changes so fast. I can't get stuck in take lock. Like every week is a new week, and the more information that I could get is the better product that we can offer you. That's what we do at RotoWire. If you want a free trial at RotoWire, go to rotowire.com/Jim. Couple days behind the paywall. See what we're all about. We have a couple quick questions before we're out, Brandon. We still got 2 minutes for our usual quitting time. This would be Charlene asks Jameson Williams or Jalen Hyatt. Now, Jameson Williams, Detroit is playing. Trying to see here. Can't find. Oh, they're playing Monday night against the Raiders. Nate Hobbs has been out the last 2 weeks. And then the other choice was Jalen Hyatt. And that one is, I don't know if Tyrod Taylor is starting this one or not, but that's against the Jets. So I'm going to be out.
Yeah, that's tough.
Man.
Yeah, the problem is that Jameson Williams just isn't really a factor in this Detroit offense.
No. And Hyatt has 71% of the snaps the last 2 weeks. He's getting some looks. So don't like either. But I think I would probably give Hyatt a 55-45 edge. What do you think?
I tend to agree. That's a really tough matchup, but matchups can't be your ultimate determination of whether or not you're going to start a player because there's still offense to be produced even in ugly games. I need somebody who's involved more than somebody who's just clearly not. And Jameson Williams just hasn't proven himself yet. I think Hyatt's put together a few highlight reel plays already this year. The Giants need to lean on a guy like that because they don't get a lot of it. And he seems to be providing it. So I think Jalen Hyatt until further notice, but I'm just guessing that there's somebody else out there on the wire you can find.
Yep. Charlene, you can always message us and let us know. We can get back to you on that one as well. I know we're off tomorrow and Thursday, so Friday's the next time we're back at here. Brandon, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
At Brandon Kravitz, you can follow me across all social platforms. I also post a podcast here on RotoWire every single weekday that's 5 minutes or less. It's called the Fantasy Bites Podcast, where I keep you updated on all the injury news heading into the new week of the NFL season. I also cover NBA and Major League Baseball. I also drop a Wednesday episode now with Nick Whalen, where we cover all things fantasy hoops. So got you covered across the landscape. And if you're ever in Orlando, come and find me. 96.9 The Game live from 3 to 6 p.m. I hope that you all wrote that down because that was a lot of information.
He is Brandon Kravitz. You can always rewind the show if you didn't hear all that. You catch it there. Brandon again every Tuesday. For Brandon, I'm Jim Coventry. Have a great day, everyone, and good luck this week.